The other question was whether we should be using WebRTC or whether we should use something like the Zoom SDK. And I'm putting Zoom SDK, but you can put anything in here that would be a quality third-party solution for this type of thing, streaming video and audio. And I'm going to start on the right-hand side here. The reason that you'd use a third party is for stability, okay? That's hard to overstate, right? It's very, very valuable to have stability. And just to be clear, I'm comparing WebRTC here to Zoom SDK, not to Zoom itself, right? And that could be any third party, Google Hangouts, FaceTime, whatever. If your users can leave your website and go use a third party that you have absolutely no control over and no idea that it even happened, that's fine. You don't need WebRTC. We're talking about building audio, video, screen sharing into your application and competing with the Zoom SDK. You will have to build everything, as opposed to Zoom, who is a huge company with lots of resources. They're going to provide stability that you are going to try and have to match. And you need to feel competent and confident. And I'm hopefully going to build those things into you. But again, we're talking about WebRTC versus an SDK, not against a third-party app. On the other side, why would you use WebRTC? Well, like I said, it is peer-to-peer, meaning it is fast. It is as fast on its worst day than Zoom or faster because it will be a browser connecting directly to a browser. Nothing else is going to be able to compete with that. The other reasons are going to be pretty straightforward, like why would you make it yourself as opposed to depend on a third party? I'll put down here control. And as an example for this, I'm going to put a buzzword underneath AI. It's a buzzword at least when I'm making the video here. Maybe by the time you're watching this, the machines have taken over, or one of the AI companies, there's a Bond villain that's taken over, whatever the case might be. But we used a solution for our audio video in a company recently that I was totally dependent on the other library. I wanted to be able to run some machine learning on our videos, but I could not access the raw video. They would only give me players and things like that. It was really frustrating. And I'm going to leave AI there because we are going to do this sort of in reprisal for my company not being able to do it. We are going to do some facial recognition looking through the videos and some other stuff hopefully as well. But the more control you have, the more cool stuff you can do. It's not necessarily the case the SDK won't let you. It was in my case. The SDK might allow you to, but it might cost money, or there'll simply be restrictions. Doing it yourself is always going to give you the most control. It comes at the price of stability because you have to do everything, but there is no replacement when you need control in development. Another thing it gives you is flexibility, and that's pretty much along the same lines as control. But if you start using the Zoom SDK, you're kind of committed to it, and if they make a decision that you don't like, you don't really have a choice. You're stuck doing things the way that they do, and it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. Another big element in doing it yourself, again using WebRTC, is going to be price. You will never be as cheap as free, and that's what WebRTC is. There's no licensing costs. There's no monthly costs or anything like that. It is just an API that you can use that's already built into JavaScript. Zoom costs money. You might use a feature that's free now, and maybe it ends up costing money later. Security is another reason, and like I said, these are less about WebRTC and more about doing it yourself. But it may be that you are doing telemedicine, and it's simply not okay to store any data on Zoom. You need to do it yourself. You have control over that. Could be that Zoom has a data breach, and that will be your problem, even though it's not maybe your fault. Lastly, I'm going to put here cross-platform. With WebRTC, as opposed to really anything else, because it's just the browser, you don't have to do anything other than just open up your browser. As an example there, before Zoom was something called Skype. And depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember Skype. You may or may not even know what Skype is, but it was Microsoft's version of Zoom. You had to install the application, you had to have an account, you had to update it as things went around. You maybe had to add a plugin to your browser if you wanted to use it, etc. You will give your users a better experience if you don't have to do anything along those lines. And it just depends on what features you're using, but WebRTC will never suffer from that. It is supported by every browser. Apple was really slow to adopt it, but it is supported everywhere. So a real quick review, WebRTC is peer-to-peer. You can pass raw video directly from one browser to another, which is really its forte. You'll have control to do whatever you want, whether it's AI or something else. You'll have flexibility. It is free. You don't have to worry about somebody else's security issues. And because it's browser-based, any browser can use it. This will wrap up our introduction. In the next section, we are going to focus on get user media. So that'll be the first thing that we do. We're going to make a project with an HTML page that has a lot of the different functionality that's relative to capturing the stream and then doing cool stuff with it. Once we get familiar with that, we will hop forward to the RTC peer connection and we'll start sending it across the wire. We'll see you in the next section.